There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Chris Lindsay, Manta's CEO, and sitting next to me is Dr. Ryan Powell, Manta's founder and Chief Technology Officer. We would like to welcome you to our fourth and final webinar as part of our Start Engine crowdfunding raise. Really appreciate everyone taking time to be with us here today. We are recording this. We're going to try to get it up on either probably our own YouTube page. So stand by. We'll send that information out later. I would also like to take a moment to say a heartfelt thank you to all of our investors, both our Republic investors and certainly our more recent Start Engine investors. We certainly recognize that without your trust and support, we couldn't do what we are trying to do here at Manta. So thank you very much for that. The other thing I should mention is that our Start Engine campaign ends tomorrow at midnight. And so if you're interested in investing or interested in reinvesting, the window for that opportunity is closing. So please take advantage of that now. For folks who have participated in our previous webinars, we're going to follow a similar format to what we've done in the past. It seems we've gotten good feedback on that. So the first half of the session will be a short presentation. We're not going to kill you with PowerPoint today, but we're going to give you a short presentation, sort of holistically looking at sort of where we see the company, probably from maybe a 20, 30,000 foot view, and where we see it going. And then we'll get into the Q&A session. We've got a big chunk of time set aside for Q&A. We've got a lot of great questions that were submitted as part of the registration for the webinar. So we'll try to get through as many of those as we can. We'll also be opening up the Q&A function as part of Zoom. Somewhere around here, there should be a button for Q&A. We'll start collecting questions at that point as well. And we'll try to, again, get to as many of them as we possibly can. So with no further ado, we'll jump right into it. Let me get the presentation set up here. Here we go. Sanjana, can you guys see everything okay? Look good? Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, so we've already talked about the intro. So first thing we want to do is talk about the road to success. And this is a fairly simplified schematic of sort of what a typical successful startup company may go through as it progresses. I actually pulled this down off of LinkedIn. There are many different variations of it, but basically the theme is the same, right? So as a startup company progresses, it will start on the left-hand side here. We talk about seed and development. So basically what this is going from the idea stage to the prototype stage, concept development. So I think in Ryan's case, going from the idea from a lot of your PhD work to what was in your head down to paper, ultimately to something that was a material manifestation of that idea, right? So, and to be clear, there's a massive amount of work that happens in the seed development stage. This is going from idea into something that's material and real, and certainly in our case, it's the technology. So that's very common. That's sort of typically where startups will begin. They will then move into the startup phase, which is really where you take that idea, that prototype, or that minimally viable product and iterate on it. So basically, we've got the idea. Now you're going to continue to improve and tweak, ultimately to get to really solid product market fits. And that idea is basically what you're developing is well suited, fits the markets that you're going after as well as possible. Market. So there could be multiple markets that you can be going after. Then as the company begins to mature, you move into really sort of the revenue generation phase, right? So you start to generate income, you start bringing on new customers, and that's where the business starts to take off. You move into the expansion phase, showing that, hey, your business works. You continue to tweak the products that you have, looking into some new markets, new market offerings, things like that. And then ultimately moving into a maturity or exit phase, which is basically you've built a really profitable, a great solid business. You can continue to expand upon that business, or maybe you look for an exit. So again, this is a very simplified overview of sort of the a successful startup progression. Also included in here is this red line, which is meant to indicate revenue. And again, this is really just more for directional sense. Basically, it's meant to show that in your early stages and seed development and startup phases, you're not making any money. You're really losing money. You're spending investment, and ultimately trying to get to the point where you're entering the growth phase, where you start to bring in some revenue and start to generate the opportunity. The reason that we want to share this is, as we go through today's discussion, we want to show you where Manta is through this progression, and we'll highlight as we go through the presentation today sort of how we view the current maturity of the company. So with that, maybe I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to take the helm now, and what I'm going to talk about are these kind of early stages of development, seed and development, and then I'll hand off to Chris just as we get to kind of the startup phase, and then he'll take it over from there. All right. So first, I want to give everyone a little bit of reminder about what we do, where we started. So the company originally started off as essentially a full stack algal biofuel company. So essentially what that means is we would grow algae, harvest it, and convert it to a renewable crude oil. About 2 years ago, we made a pivot where we're focusing primarily on remediation. And so what we're doing is taking our core technology and utilizing it to do remediation work. And here, what we're doing instead is growing, remediating, and converting. But the growth step, growing the algae, is actually where this algae is being grown in other ponds and wastewater lagoons and other places where it's causing a problem. And we're getting paid to come in, actually remediate and fix that problem. And that's actually worked out pretty well so far. In the long term, that biomass, that plant matter that we actually collect, could be converted to crude oil. But I want to make sure I focus everyone that the core business right now is focused on this remediation. And so the next bit I want to talk about is kind of looking at the evolution of our technology over time, and essentially the arc of the technology's development. And so in the beginning, you don't have a whole heck of a lot. So I started off with essentially not much more than an idea, all the way here in 2014 when I started the company. And during my PhD, I actually, somewhat by accident, came across this discovery that you can use these magnetic particles to harvest algae. And that's what you're seeing in this little picture right here. And you're basically adding these particles to the algae, this green water, it's sticking. You apply a magnet, which is what you're seeing here, and it clears the water. And the very first prototypes that we had were quite sad, but that's where you start. And so this one is actually made out of a lot of Tupperware. It's still sitting here in the office with us today. But when I started, I didn't even have a kind of the prototypical garage to start from. And so you got to start somewhere. I put in almost all of my life savings and use that to drive the company forward in successive steps, each success being used to kind of fund the next step in development. By about 2017, we'd taken something that looks like this, and through multiple iterations, lots of success, lots of things that were less than successful, we got our first, what I would say, real MVP, which is minimum viable product. What you're looking at here is a system that's a disc type magnetic separator that you can basically put the magnetic particles in algae in, it can continuously remove them, and you can get them back off. It can do everything, it just does it poorly. By 2019, we'd scaled up. The system is much larger, it's much more efficient, and it can process much more liquid. And then through 2021, we started working on improving that efficiency, starting automation, getting the system so it can run by itself without a bunch of people kind of just carefully working around it to make sure it actually can work. And then where kind of we are today, where anyone that's new is coming in, is we have essentially a fully finished commercial system. And so this is something that we can actually go out, do jobs, generate revenue from. So this gives you some idea of what that development curve looks like. But extensive resources, both in time and manpower, woman power as well, has been taken to get it all the way here. And as we made that turn late 2021, Q4 2021, towards the water remediation market, we continued to do R&D to drive down the cost. And so what I'm showing here is some of the cost reduction that we've accomplished just looking at the machinery. So this is the machinery cost per million gallons of capacity, essentially. And what you see as you go to the right, starting at our starting point, is reduction in cost. And you can see some of the different innovations that we use to get there. But I think the bottom line is that we're able to, in about 20 months, reduce the cost of the machinery by about 24-fold, which is pretty significant. But we were actually able to do much better in terms of the operating cost. And so the operating cost, these are things like the raw materials that go in, labor, anything that's consumed in the process is an operating cost. And doing the same sort of thing on this curve, as you go to the right, you see reduction in cost. And again, through multiple different innovations, we're able to reduce the cost, but here we're actually able to reduce it about 87-fold in those 20 months. And so as you can see, R&D is something that we're pretty good at. And so as we turn towards commercial development, we still have further cost reductions in our pipeline that will come with scale up. One of those is as we scale up manufacturing, we expect a further decrease in capital cost of about 60%. This is primarily just switching to different manufacturing methods. We also kind of ace up our sleeves with a better way to magnetize our discs and increase the flow rate of our machine by about twofold. I'm sorry. Which effectively decreases the cost of the machine the same percentage. And with our operating costs, as we purchase more material, we expect prices to go down. For example, the magnetite, we know that it'll go down by about half as we scale up. And I think the key point that I want to drive home is that our R&D has allowed us to be more competitive in the marketplace and also to continue to open new markets. So as you look at these curves, essentially, as we get the process cheaper and cheaper, there's more markets that we can play in. All right, at this point, I'm going to hand it back over to Chris.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, so the other thing that I would add to Ryan's point, yes, it opens up additional markets, but it's also driving more margin opportunity, right? Our costs are going down, gives us an opportunity to bring in more margin, which can accelerate our path to break even. So I think it's pretty clear. It's actually fascinating to see the arc going from the Tupperware design to where we are today, and I'm sure like the amount of headache and heartache and blood, sweat, and tears that went into that development over that 9-year period. Really, this simplistic representation here doesn't do it justice. But suffice it to say, let's just say that we're all confident that we have well accomplished what we needed to do in the seed and development stage on the road to success. Now, shifting gears a little bit, what I would like to do is focus the next bit of the conversation on product market fit. So sort of taking the development and the fantastic work that the R&D team has done over the last 9 years to get us to a position now where we're taking that concept, that prototype, and applying that technology, in this case, the core technology being our magnetic harvester, applying that in a variety of different markets. Now, we know, have a ton of data showing that, yeah, not surprisingly, our technology is fantastic at removing algae. That's what it was built and designed for. It's also really good at removing other nutrients, excessive nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus. It pulls out other sediment, turbidity, anything basically causing turbidity issues, and there's some potential for other contaminants to be removed. So we've got that core technology. Now we're trying to find the best possible place where we can deploy that technology within a variety of markets. And Ryan already alluded to this, but I just want to, again, for folks who may not have participated in previous webinars or still learning about Manta, this is where we are today. So we've evolved from the Tupperware prototype into a commercially viable system, a system that we can basically deploy anywhere, anytime. It's a semi-autonomous system capable of processing up to 75,000 gallons per day. Now we see there's certainly some potential in the pipeline for additional throughput increases. It's a scalable technology. Basically, we can add more of these magnetic discs to increase the throughput. But right now, where we are, we're able to fit all of this technology on an 8.5 by 16-foot trailer. So highly mobile. We can get out and resolve a whole host of potential water remediation issues. One other thing that I would add is that this is a technology that is patented. We have one patent that has been allowed. We've got another one very far into prosecution, and we've got a lot of trade secret around this. So for somebody to actually come in and try to replicate our technology, it would be a very difficult thing to do, even if it wasn't for our patents. So just to sort of orient everyone in terms of what we have today. The other thing I want to just sort of orient everybody on is the way we see approaching our business. Really a two-stage approach that we're looking at. The first stage is water remediation service. So very simply put, customer has a problem with the water, whether it's a pond, lake, lagoon, whatever. We can come out to the lagoon, take our system, dirty water into our system, clean water comes out of our system. They write us a check. Thank you very much. We move on to the next job. There are a number of benefits for us to take this approach. Number one, it's an opportunity for us to accelerate revenue generation as quickly as possible. Number two, it allows us to gain some market insights. As we start to shift into the equipment side, or we start selling equipment, this gives us a better sense of what the market really needs based on sort of what we're learning out there. The third piece, and I think this is a pretty significant piece, is it allows us to seed the market for future sales. So, for example, if we're out, a couple of times throughout the course of a year, addressing somebody's problem with their lagoon, it's a pretty good likelihood that somewhere down the road they may say, "Hey, you know what? Rather than having you guys come out and providing the service, I'll buy one of those." The service model is a really good fit for us. We also think it's expandable, right? It's something that we can scale. We're based here in Maryland. We see that we can pretty easily address a pretty decent swath of the mid-Atlantic. Our aspirations are not to open a bunch of Mantas throughout the United States, but rather to leverage networks of other water remediation companies, contract wastewater treatment companies that are out there. There are actually a number throughout the states. We've been in discussions with ones in Illinois, as well as out in California. Basically, we bring our technology to their portfolio. It's a service provided to their customers, and then we can expand through a strategic partnership with them. Moving quickly over to the consumable and equipment sales side, we see that happening in the next 3 to 5 years. Again, leveraging the network that we've already established with the service side of the business. We think we can drive pretty healthy margins in that sales side, particularly when you consider some of the great innovation that the R&D team has been able to do in a relatively short period of time. There's still some work to be done there, but we think we have some real opportunity to drive further margin improvement and really continue to push the envelope. So that's kind of how we see the business going over the next 3 to 5 years. Now what I want to do is start digging into a couple of these specific product market fits. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the market and talk to you about sort of why we think our technology is a good fit for that space. The first one is wastewater lagoons. Now, for folks who have been following us for a while, they get this. They've heard us talk about it before, but we want to sort of put it in a different context here. without getting too far into the weeds, wastewater lagoons are one of the most common wastewater treatment systems throughout the United States and probably throughout the world. We have over 7,000 wastewater lagoons here in the United States alone. And they're pretty common in rural small towns, places that can't afford the large wastewater treatment plants that we're all familiar with. The problem is that over 60% of these lagoons are out of compliance or have been out of compliance for some reason in the last couple of years. We've gone and we've demonstrated both in multiple locations here in Maryland as well as throughout Illinois that our technology works. It works well. We're able to address a lot of the common problems that these lagoons may have, whether it be turbidity issues, nutrient issues. On every single opportunity that we've been out there, we've shown that we can produce water that will get them these lagoon operators well within their discharge limit. So big market, big opportunity, and we've shown that we have technology that fits it. If you look at the general opportunity for total accessible market, given the number of lagoons that are out there and the number that are out of compliance, we think it's not crazy for us to be able to build over $100 million business just around the wastewater lagoon piece between our service side and ultimately equipment sales. This is not with crazy market penetration, less than 20% market penetration. So big opportunity, really solid fit for our technology. The next market I'll talk quickly about is our dredge lagoons. Now, this one honestly came to us out of left field. This was not something that we were out pursuing on our own. Someone brought this to us. And again, without getting too far into the weeds of sort of what this is about, basically, in states and cities where you have large ports, it's often necessary to dredge shipping channels to make sure that they're still navigable. Here in Maryland, there are millions of yards of silt that are dredged out of our shipping channels every year by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. What they do with that, they put it on barges. They then deposit it in these big pits, like you see the one I'm circling here. This is Cox Creek dredge material containment facility. So they put the dredge material in these large pits to settle the solids out, and then they have to discharge the water that's in this pit. Well, they haven't been able to do that in about 7 months because the water doesn't meet spec for discharge. We did a pilot trial earlier this year, back in the spring, and you can see this very pleasant picture on the right-hand side. You can see the green water that was in the lagoon, and on the and Sanjana's right hand, left-hand side of the picture is the water that came out. We were able to provide water that is well below their discharge limits. So the project went so well that we actually have a commercial project planned with the Maryland Port Administration for later this year. We are literally in the final stages of getting an agreement with them for a multi-month project. The primary focus of that project is to actually develop and build design for a commercial purchase of one of our pieces of equipment down the road. That's very exciting. There are 4 of these large containment lagoons just here in Maryland. Just in Maryland, we think this represents a multi-million-dollar opportunity. There are over 300 major ports in the United States. Now, obviously, not all of these ports deal with their dredge spoils the same way Maryland does. So our technology may not be appropriate fit for them, but let's just say there's a real potential market opportunity for our technology in this space. The last market I'll talk about is municipal wastewater treatment. This is a massive market, and this basically what we're talking here are the large wastewater treatment plants that we've seen and smelled throughout the states here. Massive business, and there are basically 3 ways that we can attack this business. The first is basically what we refer to as a polishing model. So there are many of these large plants that use magnetite, the same kind of magnetite that we use, as part of to help settle out the waste as it comes through their system. They also have a magnetic separator. We've shown that our magnetic separator, if we tag it on the back of their system, can improve their overall recovery of the magnetite in their system to the order of, let's say, $100,000 to $150,000 a year in savings just for the one plant that we looked at. We've shown this. This was demonstrated down at Marley Taylor. It worked well. The second phase where we see we can make a nice business out of this particular market is to potentially displace the current magnetic separation technology. Now, we've got some early data. We've shown this down at Marley Taylor again, that we can recover over 90% of the magnetite versus, in some instances, we've seen fairly low recoveries for the current separation technology. So basically, we've got a better mousetrap, or we think we've got a better mousetrap that could be of interest to a large wastewater treatment partner, wastewater treatment equipment partner. So we could potentially knock out the way they're doing it now. The really long shot, but this would be the massive coup, would be potentially displacing clarifier ponds. These big ponds that exist here, basically the waste comes in, it settles out over time, and then is processed. This lovely photo that we have of Ryan here, the brown beaker on the left of the screen is actually the sewage coming directly from the reaction pond at Marley Taylor coming into our system. So that's basically straight up sewage. In his right hand, or on the right side of the screen, his left hand is the water, the clear water that's after treatment. So it's remarkable that we are able to process what we've done with our system. It's a long road. I need to be very, very clear about this. It's a long road, for this type of application, but it's very compelling. The other thing I want to touch on is, so we've identified three markets, three large markets, by the way, clearly shown that our technology works at scale and works well. We've shown that there is now we're seeing is potential market interest and traction that we're building in the market. So basically, this is the funnel of trials that that are in the queue, trials that we've completed, and then on the right-hand side, I think most importantly, are the paid trials. So typically, with these funnels, what you'll see is you've got things that are filling the funnel and ultimately get to a paid customer. What this is clearly showing is that we're starting to make that progress. We're advancing the commercial opportunities and building traction out there in the market. So going back to our road to success simplified diagram here, I think it's very safe to say that we are beyond moving out of the startup phase. We've demonstrated great product market fit in three large markets. We've basically de-risked, over the course of the last 9 years, and $5 million of investment between federal, state government, private, public investment, or public investors. We've de-risked this opportunity significantly, and really shown technology works and works in a great way. Now, I would certainly argue that this is where we are today. We're really starting to build market traction. We're now in a position to start acquiring customers and going out and driving the business forward. What we need is capital to scale the business. As I said before, basically a lot of the hard work has been done. Technology has been developed. It works. We've shown it works. We've shown that there is customer interest. Now we need additional investment to scale the business. We're going to use this money very simply to build more MagCap systems. Thank you, everyone, by the way, for helping to name our system. We need more funds to build more systems. We need more funds to hire resources to build these systems and then to go out and run them in the market. We need some funds to go out and drive the marketing aspects to help build our business and grow our business, which, by the way, it should be fairly simple for the markets that we're looking at. This is not exactly high dollar, big marketing campaigns required to help grow this. We also have a clear line of sight in terms of bringing on some additional contracts for wastewater and dredge lagoon markets. Geographic expansion, we talked about potential strategic partnerships with other wastewater treatment contract managers that are out there. We need to advance those conversations. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the news that we announced earlier this week about our letter of intent with Kirschner Environmental Technology. Kirschner is a fantastic organization. Basically, it's an engineering organization that provides solutions for water and wastewater treatment, the water and wastewater treatment industry. And they really focus more on cutting edge, innovative solutions. And we're in the discussions with them to partner, to have them represent us, for us to be another tool in their technology toolbox to address potential customer needs. So this, I think, is a very clear indicator of commercial interest and the potential for our technology in the market. And the last couple of things that we need to do is, Ryan alluded to the product and process improvement. I think there's still a lot of work to be done there, and a lot of opportunity to cut costs out, open more markets, and drive those margins, which is key. And then last but not least, as we start looking at the 3 to 5 year plan, we need to start building out manufacturing infrastructure to make sure that we'll be ready to hit the growth as we see it coming. So that's a ton. We jammed. I'm looking at the watch now. We actually were able to hit it all in about the time that we were shooting for. Thank you everyone for listening to us for that. Now with that, I think we'll move over into the Q&A session after I take a breath. So
maybe I can start taking
please.
some of the questions, give Chris a chance here. Let's see. All right, so one of the R&D technical questions we have is, do you see an opportunity to further automate the wastewater treatment efforts? Absolutely. We have some new technology that we just installed on our system relatively recently that will allow the system to quite literally sense how well it's working, and to start off to shut down if there's any issues, but eventually we'll be able to use that to have the system adjust and essentially run itself in real time. Certainly a lot of different opportunities. I'll take another one, and then Chris, if you want to hop in after that.
Absolutely. Sort of scanning.
What does the pipeline look like for more pilots? So as Chris mentioned, a couple of them. So we're going to be doing more work with the Port Administration. That's a paid job. It's kind of a second stage pilot that'll lead to a much larger contract. We have more work that we have planned down at Marley Taylor to try to get that ball to the next stage. There's definitely more. I think the one problem we have is because we're a small organization, there's way more than we can actually get to.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason that we need to raise this investment.
Actually, that's a fantastic point that I failed to sort of mention, is that when we look at the pipeline, we've actually, on the business development side, this actually, it's anathema for me to even think about saying this, but we've slowed things down a bit because we've got so much potential that's out in front of us. We need these additional resources to build more harvesters or more MagCap systems and bring additional resources on, so we can really expand what we've got out there. So we're already bumping against the limits of what we can do, which is why this raise is so important for us. All right, so I'll jump in here. Let me see. This is a great question that came in prior to the part of the registration. After investing, what is the best way for Manta shareholders to help the company progress? What I would say in the how many hours do we have left before the raise closed? 20, 30 some hours before the raise closes. First thing I would say is spread the word, right? As you saw in sort of our rapid fire presentation, we're really at the point where we need the funds to allow us to scale the business. Everything else has been de-risked. We're ready to go. We just need the funds to build the business. So appreciate, look, times are tough. And not everybody can, there are limits obviously on what people can invest, but we would ask that you reach out to your network, spread the news about Manta, spread the news about our raise, particularly our raise closing tomorrow. We think we've got a great investment opportunity right now. So please do that. Beyond that, I think we'll be in touch through our emails. I think we've been working really hard to improve our communication via our emails, but I think as things start to develop for us, we'll be in communication with the network. Our investors team, Manta, you guys are phenomenal. So we really appreciate all that you're doing for us. So any connections, things like that we could potentially leverage from you would be appreciated as well.
And kind of along these lines, I have a question. What states do you have projects ongoing in? And so the two major ones are Maryland, where we're based, and in Illinois. Illinois, we've done a fair amount of work there, and we've received a pretty warm reception. We also have projects that were inbound from California, from Florida, from all over the place. So those are the two primary states, but there's potential projects all over the place.
I'll jump in on the IPO question. This actually popped up from a number of folks. The question is, do we have any plans or prospects for an IPO? If so, when? The short answer is, at this point, no, we do not. Right now, number one, from what we understand, it's a really rough market to even be considering an IPO. We're certainly not in a position to move forward with an IPO. What I would see more likely for us is looking for more of a strategic alliance as a way to sort of drive our business forward here, and probably likely some additional rounds of investment that will be necessary for us moving forward. Again, at this point, no plans for an IPO that we're looking at.
Okay, so we have a question here. Has Manta sold any biofuel commercially yet? If not, what steps are ahead before we get there? And what's the anticipated ETA? So the answer is, I'd say yes, but de minimis. So basically, we have made biofuel on spec biofuel. We've tested it in residential housing. We tested it in a commercial setting, and we've sold very small amounts of both. And so, we can make the product, take it all the way through to the end, but we haven't really commercialized it to any extent yet. And right now, the biofuels, they're much, much further out. The focus is on trying to get the company to cash flow neutral before we want to push that kind of down the road for now. That's not the priority.
Okay, I'll jump in here with another finance question. How long till break even? And also, when are you projecting positive cash flow? Right now, our current projections, based on what we're looking at for the market, is probably a little over 2 years for break even. That is obviously going to be a function of sort of funds that we're able to bring in. More funds we can accelerate, less funds it's going to take us longer. I would argue that these projections are very reasonable. It doesn't, we're not projecting, massive numbers of service contracts or anything like that. It's basically looking at a blend of a certain, a minimal number of service jobs, as well as just a handful of pieces of equipment sales over the next 2-3 years. I think will help us get there. We are very stingy with our capital. We much to the chagrin of some of our employees, but no, we're very scrappy, right? So we do a great job, I think, of very closely guarding our capital. So, but I would think 2 to 3 years out.
All right, I've got a question from George Adkins. How long are you on site for a typical waste treatment customer? So this is one of those it depends questions. It really depends on what they need. So we've been on site for as short as a day and as long as several months. and kind of everywhere in between. So it really does depend.
Let me just look here. How long before we are go to market, and do we have any interest from abroad in our technology? Basically, I guess it depends on how you define go to market. I would argue that in Q4 of this year, we'll be in a position to go to market, meaning that we're going to be moving forward with a sizable paid job with Maryland Port Administration. That's probably a quasi go to market. It'll be a paid job, but it's also more on the development side that will lead to sort of hopefully further equipment sales down the road. But I think we're 1-2 quarters away from really being in a position to go out there and push into the various markets. Again, I think our rate limiting step for this is we actually have to sort of be very selective about what opportunities we want to pursue, because right now we have one MagCap system, one harvester. So we're really trying to walk the line of, okay, how much work do we want to do to try to fill the business development pipeline versus going out and getting paying jobs. So it's a little bit of a delicate dance there. And interest from abroad. We've had a couple of people that we've spoken to. Quite honestly, our focus has been very much domestic opportunities, but I think very clearly our technology would be very suitable in a whole host of markets outside of the United States.
So I have a question here. How is the wastewater treatment project going? I would say that kind of group of projects has gone vastly better than any of us could have hoped, particularly the one that Chris showed where we're working on the clarifier replacement. That's certainly one where we went into it not even sure if the machine would be able to hold up, but it held up well, and it actually did very well in terms of its performance. The last project that we did down at Marley Taylor, the facility manager was very happy with what we did. We hit all the major metrics, invited us down to kind of do the next step in the process. So that's all going very well.
Couple of great questions in here from George Adkins. I'll jump in here. Any chance for a subscription service or retainer-based business line? Or wastewater lagoon, dredge lagoons, a one-time operation, or are they recurring customer? That's a great point. That's actually an opportunity that we've been discussing, because typically what may happen is these lagoons and wastewater lagoons will cycle. We can come in, clean it up for a certain period of time, they'll be good for a while, and then they'll probably have a recurring theme. So we could certainly look at a subscription model or retainer-based model. Is something that is certainly could be in the cards for us and or our customers. The other thought that we're kicking around would be for a local municipality. So for example, you get a county wastewater treatment group who may have multiple wastewater lagoons. They either buy or rent a machine, or lease a machine, or have a subscription model where basically they can then treat multiple lagoons as they have as they need, or we can come in and treat them as they need. So absolutely, George, that's something we're thinking about, and I think there's a real opportunity for the recurring market opportunity. The other thing, maybe just while I'm here, we'll talk about George had a question around how do we market, sort of what's our marketing approach look like, marketing strategy. It's interesting, the markets that we're looking at are very tight-knit markets. So for example, here in Maryland, we did a couple of trials, and everyone knew everyone associated with any lagoon operation. I mean, literally from county to county to county, everybody, and as we're doing the trials, like, hey, have you talked to so-and-so down in Somerset County? Have you talked to this guy over in Wycomico? So they're very tight organizations, very close-knit groups. And there are industry organizations, professional organizations that I think with a modest marketing approach, you come in, you show the technology works, you go to a couple of conferences and trade shows per year. I think the key is showing that the technology works. It's pretty straightforward from there. I think you can almost build a word of mouth campaign that goes from there. For example, as Ryan mentioned, we've had great receptivity from the folks out in Illinois, the Illinois Rural Water Association. They've been phenomenal. In fact, I guess back in March, we went out there, you presented to their operators, got great reception on that. We were actually invited back, I think next month, to do another presentation to a larger group. So it's a really tight group that I think it doesn't give me a lot of heartburn to be able to get out there and promote this.
Yeah, and the nice thing is that these groups are pretty pragmatic. They want to see that it works.
Yep.
They want to see that the price works for them. It's much easier, I think, for a marketing perspective. Question: do you have a sales team? You are looking at the sales team currently. This is it. That's it for now. We'd love to expand and have a sales team, but right now it's me and Chris.
Looking through our list here. Let me see. There are a couple of questions from folks around their investment, how they get credit for their investment, how do they get their information regarding their investment. We have to be very careful in terms of what we can't provide anyone guidance with respect to their investments, at least the mechanics of their investments. What I would suggest for the Republic investors, if you go to send an email to investors@republic.co, again, it's investors@republic.co, not com.co. They're fantastic. They can give you the guidance and talk about the mechanics and the mechanisms of your investment, sort of what you have, how it works, what will happen going forward, and all of those sorts of things. We just have to be, I hope you can appreciate that we have to be very careful about what we're saying here. We don't want to give anyone sort of on the wrong track there. But and if you guys have any problems or questions with that, you guys have seen my email more than enough. So you can reach out to me and I can get you directed to the right folks there as well. They've got a fantastic team, as does Start Engine. We're working with some great people at Start Engine as well. So any problems or from there, just reach out to me and I'll try to get you redirected to the right folks.
Okay, so question is, outside of raising money through Start Engine, are there other sources of financing being considered, such as government grants? We are certainly always on the lookout for government grants and kind of working through to see if they're a fit. The company was literally built in the beginning from grants, primarily federal and state grants. So we are certainly always on the lookout for other options.
Let me see here. Sorry, folks. I don't mean to you didn't talk about the Kirschner LOI.
I did not. No.
Okay. Do you mind if I jump in on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I touched on this briefly in the presentation. I got a couple of questions around the Kirschner LOI, or letter of intent. And just to be clear, it's a letter of intent means that basically we're discussing the potential to put together a binding agreement. And this is, from our perspective, it's a significant development for us, because again, this is a validation of a respected of the commercial potential for our technology. The Kirschner environmental team is they've worked with a lot of innovative solutions for water and wastewater treatment. And this really, shows that somebody's interested and wants our technology in their portfolio as a potential solution. It's not the only thing that they're going to be out there looking at to provide solutions for customers, but they see the value of our technology, so much so that they want to be able to use it as they recommend solutions, as well as sell it to people who may be interested down the road. We're not going to get into the specifics of the terms that are in there. But I think the key takeaway here is that it's clearly both parties are interested in moving to the next step for a more meaningful commercial engagement.
I have a question from Frank Rogers about whether we've reached out to companies like Ecolab for partners or future acquisition. I am not aware that we've reached out to them. But we certainly are always interested in seeing if there's any partners or any other potential places where we could have an acquisition. We're certainly always on the lookout.
That's thanks, Frank. We can certainly check that one out and see what's there. There's a question: who is the competition, and are they using similar systems? I guess it depends. If you talk about wastewater lagoons, for example, is, to the best of my knowledge, and correct me if you see it differently, Ryan, to the best of my knowledge, wastewater lagoon competition is really the large wastewater treatment plants. And that often is the problem. I think most lagoon operators, aside from the headache of running a large wastewater treatment plant, that is the foolproof solution, right? You have the big, pricey, multi-million-dollar plants that can process large volumes of wastewater very effectively. That's our biggest competitor, I believe, and certainly in that market. The problem is that many of these smaller communities don't have the wherewithal to be able to afford something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. I think one of the operators that we talked to summed it up best when he said, when they have these sort of problems, they have nowhere to turn to. Basically, they are stuck between a rock and a hard place, because on one hand they have EPA that they'll have potential violations which can be quite severe. On the other hand, they don't have the money to basically come in and actually fix it with a full size what's called mechanical plant. And so they were pretty happy to see that we could come in with our solution, solve the problem when they need it, and then and do it in a way and for an amount that they could actually afford.
Right.
I have a question from Mark Lentz. Does your process remediate forever chemicals? It looks like it should, to some extent. That's something we haven't really got into in a lot of detail. I know that there's a recent discovery out there of a company that's using magnetic nanoparticles with specialized coatings to remediate forever chemicals, and that's somewhere on our bucket list of things to get. But again, our bucket list is quite long. But certainly it's a lot of money there. I think the one challenge with that market is that in the forever chemical space, you need to be able to remove a lot. You need to be able to have very high removal percentages to start to get to where you need to be, because the levels that are hazardous are just ridiculously low. But that's certainly something we are aware of and we would love to pursue.
Question about what is the estimated cost to purchase a unit, from David Punchard. unfortunately, as most questions that we get here, it depends. And I would ask to sort of treat this really more of a directional answer. I would say for it's called a minimal, sort of middle of the road type application, maybe for lagoons, nominally $150,000 to $200,000 per unit. And that should be likely sufficient flow rates to address the needs there. For other applications, say, for example, in the dredge lagoons, very different situation, because very different setup in terms of how of the discharge rates. When they want to discharge just crazy high volumes in relatively short periods of time, and with that comes a much higher price tag. But I think that's one of the nice things when we look at our technology, is very scalable to be able to, as we're looking at larger and larger systems, you can start to build up and get to the point where we can increase flow rates to address a wide variety of applications. Again, sorry, that's a little bit of I'm dodging the bullet a little bit here, but I would say, call it 150 to 200 for the entry level unit, if you will. And then it can get considerably higher for higher flow rates.
All right, we've got a question from Kevin, basically asking about if we've looked into lenders, essentially debt financing. And I would say that we are on the cusp of being able to utilize debt financing. We're not quite there yet. We need to get enough reoccurring revenue, basically continually prove out that process, move forward into that next section that Chris highlighted, before we could go and get traditional financing. But that is certainly something that's on our radar. Once we can kind of get over that hurdle, then yeah, we can kind of, the expansion of machinery and personnel can be in large part funded through debt financing. Then still raise investment to kind of pour kind of rocket fuel on. But yeah, that opens up, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
There are a couple of questions from folks asking about, there's a couple of folks who have lakes, lagoons, bodies of water near them that could potentially use our technology. And how do they get a hold of us, or how do we talk about potentially helping them with their problem? What I would suggest is, we should have all your contact information here. We can reach out to you directly and have that conversation about what we could do. Again, as Ryan mentioned earlier, we're bumping up against capacity in terms of what we can take on for new jobs at the moment. But we would certainly love to be in a position where we could reach out and help, especially our investors and our investors network, with some water remediation issues. So we can reach out to you guys directly. I'm looking away from the screen here. I'm looking at a monitor here, trying to make sure we have some of the contact information. So we should be able to do that. Otherwise, shoot me a note directly, and we can have that conversation.
So Mark Lenz has another question. Is that Manta filtered water you're drinking right here? Short answer is no, but our system certainly could be adapted to get to that point. A lot of the stuff that we use is used in traditional water treatment. There's some extra kind of operations that you'd want to have on there. Certainly our stuff is not filtered highly enough for human consumption, but all the different inputs we need, you could get them what are called NSF grade, which are drinking water grade, if you wanted to. We have joked about that in the past.
Yeah.
If one of us should be, drinking some of the water in the end, and I said that since Chris is the CEO, that clearly is his.
Right.
Falls on him.
That would fall under the other duties as to be defined, right? I think we're bumping up against the clock here. There are a handful of questions that we haven't gotten to, but just taking a quick peruse, see if there's a short one that we could hit really quickly. Sorry, folks. What are the plans for growing commercialization? I think we hit that pretty hard through the presentation. Again, immediate plans, we're going to go do this, hope to go do this job with Maryland Port Administration. We've got some other opportunities, as Ryan alluded to earlier, to go back to Marley Taylor to advance our municipal wastewater treatment side of the business. And then I think we've got a couple of other potential developments here on the broader lagoon wastewater management side that we could get into as well. So, you know, that there's a number of good opportunities. Hopefully, we gave you a flavor of what we're doing here in previous discussion. So, I think with that, we probably
I think we've pretty well covered everything in one way or the other. So
I guess with that, we would like to thank you for taking time to be with us this afternoon. Again, for those who have invested, thank you very much for your investment. For those who haven't, hopefully we've helped move the needle and entice you to invest. Spread the word about Manta, and the clock is ticking to get in at this investment opportunity. So thank you very much for being with us, and have a great rest of your day.